Ladies and gentlemen, a warm online welcome to the second episode of 90 Minutes to Close the Loop, the web series of the Close the Glass Loop platform entirely dedicated to glass collection and recycling. By hearing from thought leaders and practitioners on key topics, showcasing best practices as we will today with the local glass recycling story in Leeds, and giving regular updates on the activities of the platform, the goal of this web series is to support the objective of Close the Glass Loop to reach a rate of 90% collection for recycling of glass packaging placed on the market in the EU by 2030. So whether you're working in manufacturing, in packaging, in marketing, in distribution, in municipal waste management, or in collection and recycling, we hope that you will learn something new, think differently about something you thought you knew, or be inspired by an approach in another country or another sector. For today's episode, we received close to 250 registrations, which shows there is a huge interest in building this community and sharing expertise to improve on the circular economy. And as it's never clear who else is behind his screen watching when we're online, here you see a snapshot of where people are coming from. Just like in our first episode, the #1 country is Portugal, with almost 40 participants. So, bom dia to our colleagues joining from Portugal, and muito obrigado for your continued commitment. Next up is France, followed closely by Belgium, a little bit like in the 2018 World Cup. We also have a global outreach with participants from 33 countries, of which 20 are EU and 13 are non-EU. So welcome to colleagues joining from around the world in the United States, in Brazil, in Chile, in Iceland, or in Turkey, to name but a few. We're also live tweeting, so you can join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtags #CloseTheGlassLoop and 90 Minutes, and you can follow us on @TheGlassLoop. To the right of the live stream on your screen, you will find the Slido box. This is an audience interaction tool where you can raise questions and comments, vote for your favorite questions, and respond to polls. I will be monitoring this tool, and I really encourage you to use it because it's always interesting to hear from speakers, but also from the questions and comments raised by the audience, and I will do my best to take those up. Now, in our first episode, we discussed the ambitions of the glass value chain to achieve its recycling targets. Today, we dig deeper by looking more closely at a concept that has shaped the circular economy policies of the European Union since the 1990s: extended producer responsibility. Or in other words, the mechanism by which the disposal of waste becomes the responsibility of the producer in view of transforming waste materials into secondary raw materials for the circular economy. What does extended producer responsibility inspire for you? Now, I have just launched the poll in the Slido. You can answer that question with a maximum limit of 50 characters. So it will be good to hear from you what EPR inspires at the beginning of this session, and we'll be able to comment on that as we go along. Since the 2018 revision of the EU Waste Framework Directive and the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive and the subsequent EU Single-Use Plastics Directive, extended producer responsibility has become a real cornerstone of the EU's waste strategy. And it is now mandatory that an EPR scheme is established for all packaging by 2025 in every member state. At the same time, minimum requirements on EPR schemes have been established, setting common requirements on governance and strategy. And the expectations on EPR just keep on growing, up and down the value chain, whether it's on eco-modulation or dealing with littered items. And yet, despite this history, or maybe because of this history, nothing is simple. I like to think of EPR as a family picture, where every individual is unique in his own right, but where you can also see some strong resemblance between members. And like in a big family, you will have members with very diverging views on a topic, as well as multiple generations. In EPR, it's the same. You have the for-profit and the non-for-profit. You have the monomaterials and the multiple materials. You have those involved in waste management and those who remain as financial intermediaries. You have countries with single PROs and countries with multiple PROs, and the list goes on. So, do packaging recovery organizations hold the key to close the loop? Let's find out in today's main topic. So, if you're ready, let's get straight down to it as the clock is ticking. Setting the scene today, I am honored to introduce our keynote speaker who definitely has his place in the EPR family picture I was referring to earlier, Petr Börkey, who is Principal Administrator at the OECD Environment Directorate. He is joining us from Paris, so thanks a lot for taking the time to be with us and to give us a perspective on where we stand with extended producer responsibility and where we're going. Petr, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and thanks for having me. And let me already say that I think that this family picture, the family on the picture is growing very, very fast. And I have actually a slide to talk about that. So, I'm certainly very pleased for this opportunity to exchange with the glass packaging value chain, which is, I think, something I haven't had an opportunity to do in the past. What I want to do in my talk is really to focus on some recent developments on extended producer responsibility, mostly in the EU, really, where this topic is going very strong. Which is the topic of fee modulation and the introduction of fee modulation into EPR systems. And I will try to outline some of the opportunities, but also the challenges that this brings with it. But before I go there, what I want to do is to really position extended producer responsibility in the broader policy debate about circular economy. So I will go to my first slide here, which may be common language of or common knowledge by now to most of you. But so this is the way the OECD defines the circular economy. It's about closing, slowing, and narrowing material loops. So, the closing is obvious. This is the closing of material cycles. The slowing is about extending the lifetime of, the products and materials that are in the economy. And the narrowing of material loops is about improving the resource efficiency with which we deliver goods and services. So this is how we view it. And in this whole debate, there's a huge emphasis that is put on product and material design as a very important lever and starting point to achieve circularity. And in this context, extended producer responsibility is really seen as a key policy approach to help achieve circular economy objectives because it connects different parts up and downstream of the value chain and is also perceived to be a highly successful and effective policy approach. So, and indeed, this is also what we see on the ground. The use of extended producer responsibility as a policy approach has risen very sharply in the last 2 decades. Most OECD countries have introduced extended producer responsibility systems for certain product categories. So this is broader than just packaging, of course. And we've been able to count around 400 systems that we counted back in 2016. But there's also an increasing use of extended producer responsibility now in emerging markets and in some other places around the world, basically, than the OECD membership. And back in 2016, the OECD developed policy guidance on extended producer responsibility to support the effective design and implementation of extended producer responsibility. And I won't go into the details of this, of course, there's no time for that, but there's quite a lot of useful guidance in there. But some of the key findings at that point were that extended producer responsibility is really highly effective in generating necessary financial flows and to achieve higher collection and recycling rates. This is a proven fact. However, extended producer responsibility also largely failed to achieve another key objective, which was to incentivize producers to improve product and material design for better recyclability, which is, one of the key goals that I just referred to as being at the heart of the circular economy transition. So far, extended producer responsibility actually failed on one of the key goals it is now praised for in the circular economy context. So that's a little bit of a paradox, and I will come back to that a little bit later. So the reason for this failure or apparent failure, and I should maybe qualify this a little bit, of course, because in the packaging sector, there has been incentives coming from EPR systems because fees are of course differentiated by material. So there have been some effects, mostly in the form of lightweighting and switching to alternative materials. But those effects have not been tied to more granular changes in product and material design. So the reason why extended producer responsibility has failed to some extent here is that instead of being implemented as individual producer responsibility, where every producer is directly responsible for their own products, EPR has in fact been implemented through collective approaches and the use of producer responsibility organizations for very good reasons, because they deliver huge economies of scale. But they have led to actually also diluting the design incentives that come from the internalization of end-of-life costs at the level of producers. So policymakers are now intending to fix this through mandating the use of modulated fees. At least this is the case in the European Union. In other words, the fee modulation is the modification of fees paid by producers according to measurable product characteristics that determine environmental outcomes. So that is really the conceptual idea behind fee modulation. And at the OECD, we're just in the final stages of developing a paper that with my co-authors, Fritz Laubinger and Andrew Brown, that looks into this and tries to identify some of the opportunities and challenges that are linked to the introduction of fee modulation. So on my next slide, I'm trying to give an overview of different types of fee modulation. And again, time is short and I cannot go into a lot of detail here, but basically we differentiate between basic fee modulation, which is essentially what we already have in the packaging sector with a differentiation of fees according to materials. Then there's granular fee modulation, which really aims to reflect end-of-life costs much more precisely and link it to specific design features, combination of materials, etc., etc. We have the bonus-malus fee modulation, which is in place in France, for instance, which applies bonuses and maluses as a percentage of end-of-life costs, but that are not necessarily tied to the actual cost differences in collecting and recycling those products, and that can also relate to other criteria than recyclability. And I should say that France now even goes one step further in its latest law on the subject, and now authorizes fee modulation that can be as high as 20% of the product price. So not the end-of-life cost, but the product price. So not the package, but the package plus the contents. So that would be a huge change and change the amplitude of of the possible amplitude of fee modulation quite significantly. So the objectives of fee modulation are clear. Ensure that producers pay attention to end of life and the environmental consequences of their products more generally, and have sufficient incentives to minimize these consequences. As far as possible. Ultimately, the goal is to better internalize the environmental costs in decision making and into product prices. But fee modulation also has a number of challenges. I think the first one is, of course, that fee modulation adds quite a bit of complexity to EPR systems. And I mean, there's a long list here on the slide. There's no way I can go through all of them. So I will just highlight a few of the challenges that seem particularly relevant in this context. So the complexity is an issue because it generates additional costs, administrative costs for all stakeholders, including also for governments that are overseeing these systems. And, the additional complexity then can lead to potentially free riding, increased free riding when firms find it too difficult or costly to comply. These costs of advanced fee modulation should also be considered, of course, relative to the added benefit. So, the benefits that will be generated through, better product design and reducing end-of-life costs, for instance. Also, fee modulation can potentially jeopardize, full cost recovery. That it introduces some uncertainty about revenue. And the amplitude of fee modulation also requires careful consideration. The small ratio of fee modulation to product price will provide little incentive for DFE, for design for environment. While, I think this is mostly probably an issue in product markets that have, more complex products. I think actually the best field of application is probably packaging because, the end-of-life cost versus the cost of the package is actually, more favorable. And finally, I think there's the topic of harmonization. A lack of harmonization of fee modulation criteria across jurisdictions could in fact lead to hampering the effectiveness of the approach. And if every EU country, EU member state basically goes a different route and sends different, design signals through the modulation to producers, this could very well just end up being a lot of noise that producers will simply ignore. So, and this concludes my talk. The challenges, that fee modulation brings with it are serious, and there's really no experience so far in how they are best addressed. I mean, I think the only two countries that have done anything, towards that are France and Italy, with relatively different models. But it should be clear that this policy agenda, therefore, is highly experimental, as there is almost no experience. And however, if it is successful, then it could really generate a very profound and positive change, and encourage the circular economy in the way it's intended. So, I hope this will spark few discussions, and hope it's been useful as a scene setter. Thank you, Jean-Paul.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this opening. I maybe just have one question as a reaction to what you were saying in terms of, to some extent, extended producer responsibility has failed. At the same time, it seems that there are massive expectations precisely on extended producer responsibility, and a multitude of policies and legislation where you will find that. How do you see this moving forward, especially when considering some other types of approaches that are almost competing with extended producer responsibility as we know it? For instance, deposit refund schemes and other such initiatives. Do you see that extended producer responsibility will continue to grow in a stable manner, or do you see a risk that basically in the end it's so experimental that it won't really succeed?
Well, thanks for the question. I think, I would be surprised if this experimentation throws extended producer responsibility entirely off the rails. I think, there are, of course, challenges linked to this experimentation with fee modulation, but ultimately, I assume that cool heads will prevail, and maybe that we will go about this sort of in little steps. Begin with the obvious, relatively simple changes, maybe modulate, but on a limited number of criteria and for a limited number of products and materials, a little bit like what CITIO has done in France, maybe. And then, the challenges can be overcome very, very easily. But your question also brings up maybe a broader question, which is that of, is extended producer responsibility really the best tool to incentivize design changes, the best policy tool to achieve those changes? I think the jury about that is largely out. You can be a little bit skeptical. But, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are product standards that are also not easy to agree on. Regulators don't have the information to make choices. The information really resides in the value chain. So many of the issues that you will have with EPR fee modulation, you will also have with product standards. So maybe, there will be more discussion about that, but, that would be my response. Thank you.
Yeah, I dare to imagine there will be much more discussion on extended producer responsibility moving forward. Thank you very much, Peter, for having taken the time to be with us. Maybe I bring you back in during our panel discussion if we have a moment. So thank you so much. And now we move to the panel debate where we find experience from the glass collection and recycling value chain. So joining me for this panel discussion, 5 members of the glass collection and recycling value chain. We have Jean Ornin, who is CEO of CITIO. He is joining us from Paris in France. We have Petr Balner, who is Director of System Development Department at EKO-KOM, joining us from Olomouc in the Czech Republic. We have Sylvie Dobrzynska, who is European Sourcing Manager at OI. She's joining us from Lyon in France. We have Patrick Lesueur, who is Head of Prospective and Development Unit at the Bonduelle Group. He is joining us from Lille, also in France. And we have Filipe Carneiro, who is Head of Department for Support to Operations and Project Implementation at LIPOR, who is joining us from Porto in Portugal. So welcome to the 5 of you, and thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. As a first reaction then, maybe to Peter Börkey's speech, I would like to turn to Jean first. I mean, Peter mentioned several times the French example in relation to eco-modulation. Can you tell us a little bit about how that approach unfolds in France, and whether you think there is a need to set up a system of eco-modulation of fees for glass packaging? Jean.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Hi, everyone. CTO, just for information, runs the producer responsibility system for household packaging and paper in France. We have 30,000 companies who trust us, and we invest about 800 million euros in each year in eco-design collection, sorting of packaging and paper. And just for information, glass represents about 2.2 million tons recycled each year. And the recycling rate in France is 85%. And it's a very French solution because 98% of glass is recycled in France. Now, to answer your question about eco-modulation, it's true that we did introduce fee modulation about 10 years ago in order to reduce and improve recyclability. And, that's the point raised by Petr earlier. Fee modulation really concerns, in the first place, plastics. We have a lot of modulations for plastic because the issue of recyclability is high in plastic. The issue, we have fee modulation for integration of recycled contents, and we also have fee modulation linked to the number of packaging units. The more complex is your packaging, the more you pay, which is linked to complexity. We will sometimes, say French are so complex. But it's true because we have all those fee modulations. Now, for glass, I have to say that glass has less. We have this system of bonus-malus for packaging. The more recyclable is your packaging, if you can get bonus. The less recyclable, you can get malus. And for glass, by nature, glass is eco-design. And so we really focused in the past 20, 25 years to reduce the weight and with the carbon impact. So if you take today a glass of or bottle of wine, French wine or Italian wine or whatever wine, it has lost about 20% of its weight over the past 25 years. But in addition, it's true that even for glass, we have a system of what we say malus, penalties. For instance, if you have a bottle which includes a ceramic cap on the top, it's a problem for recyclers. So, if you do that, you're going to pay 50 to 100% more. So you can double the price you pay for this bottle. If you have a glass packaging with a non-magnetic steel closing system, it's a problem for recycle. So it's a problem for recycling. And therefore, you're going to pay 100% more, so you double the price. So that's this system which was mentioned to Petr. Although glass is a very recyclable material, we think and we believe that bonus and malus can give strong stimulation for producers to reach the perfection, the eternal life for glass. That's I hope I do answer to your question.
Yeah, so glass is recyclable, but it always combines with other materials. So there could be a need for eco-modulation there. Okay, if we go then to the Czech Republic, Petr, do you see a need to eco-modulate fees on glass packaging? Are you considering that in the Czech Republic?
Of course, the principle of eco-modulation is to cover all the costs from the collection till recycling. And without, of course, the revenues from the selling of the materials. And I am fully agree with Jan that it's the same in Czech. If some material has some problem for the recyclers, for example, the cups, or they have to take out the aluminium or the ceramics, there are the extra costs. And of course, the material have to cover the costs. So that's the principle of the eco-modulation. And we go this way that we want to keep the packers to fill the goods to the package for which they are designed their filling lines, etc., etc. And our goal is to find out the solution, how to collect, how to sort out, and how to recycle almost all the packaging. So that's our view on the fee modulation. And one is the complication of the sorting or reprocessing process. Second is the price on the market, because you have the transparent glass, you have colored glass, different costs or different revenues from selling of the material. But the cost during all the process are almost the same. So the eco-modulation in our case for the future will cover the colors, I'm sure. So,
okay. Yeah.
Sorry. And one short comment to the deposit. Deposit is for some type of materials can be solution, but the deposit solve only very small part of packaging. And in the glass, you can collect the drinking or the beverage glass, but what to do with the jars? So still the role of the EPR is very important. So sorry for interrupt, but I feel that it's important to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's a good point, and you mentioned also the colors, so that's also maybe something we can go into a little bit later. Sylvie, you're representing a glass manufacturer, OI. You're manufacturing glass, but you're also taking up a lot of recycled glass into your furnaces. Do you see a need for eco-modulation, and if so, what shape could that take?
Well, in fact, we believe that the purpose of this is, in fact, to protect the environment, protect the planet. And so we think that it's important to keep the glass in the closed loop. And so that's why we are supportive of this eco-modulation. And we think that it's important to bring two important aspects to this intended change in the legislation. And the first one is permanent material. I liked what Jean said about the fact that by nature, glass packaging by themselves are eco-designed because it's a permanent, it can be endlessly recyclable without losing their properties. And there is a demonstrated know-how in doing this, and it should be considered in the eco-modulation, in our opinion. And secondly, the other aspect is recyclability, because there is recyclability in theory and there is recyclability in practice. And glass is actually doing it. We are recycling. And so we need to have this recognition in the eco-modulation. That is what we would like to see in practice in the future.
Okay, yeah, permanent materials. I think I've heard about that before, I believe. So an important point there. And if then we go to Patrick, you're representing a brand, a Bonduelle. Do you see eco-modulation as a driver for making choices in terms of packaging? And what do you expect in terms of eco-modulation in relation to glass?
Yes, thank you, Jean-Pierre. Yes, Bonduelle, most of you will know we produce vegetable in different formats. Glass is one of them. So very happy to join you today. And maybe to come back to the conversation we had with Petr, EPR scheme indeed is the scheme that's being applied across Europe. It's not perfect, but I don't see anything else working. And the alternative would be for each company to have its own recycling scheme, and you can imagine the complexity of this in the real world. So I think it's by far the best, and we've seen it in a number of countries, including France. The weakness of the system is indeed that it dilutes the responsibility of the company, because we all move together. So it means, if you are really driving it, then you may feel responsible for it. But if you're not, and we see it very often, if I take France, for example, where lots of companies see CTO not as a representative of the company, but more as the state or the regulator imposing taxes and so. So I think, but that said, this is still the best. It's the most efficient to reach recycling rates and so. So I think from my experience, eco-modulation can be a tool that we apply. I think there are a few caveats, and they were mentioned. The first one, as you thought, is Europe, and if I take the single market, harmonization. So the intent, I believe, behind eco-modulation is to influence the choice of the brands. But when you have 25 different schemes in each country and you have European supply chain, basically the effect will be pretty null, because if one effect is neutralized by another country, the net result will be basically we stay put and we just ignore it, saving here and losing there. So I think for me it would really work if I take Europe, if it would be basically really harmonized between the countries, because then you will really drive the choices of the companies. So that's one. The second one, and if I take France, we need to decide if this is the tool or not. But if I take France at the moment, we have an avalanche of regulations. Every 18 months, there's a new regulation with some pretty radical shift happening. Now, the level of complexity for companies is high. So if you add to that eco-modulation, and as Jean said, if you want to do it well, it has to be complex because situations are different. The net result is companies in general are completely lost. So once again, if the choice is to influence the choice of the company, then what you need to bring them is clarity and long-term visibility on what's happening. And launching every year a new ban or a new system or a new scheme is just not helping.
Harmonization and clarity.
Yes, and the third one, if I may, is eco-modulation. I think that can be one way of, let's say, responsibilizing the companies. It cannot be the only one. So it's a cost, it's an economy. But if I take, in fast-moving consumer goods, what's more important is consumer choice. So, informing the consumer, making him aware, as you said, of the recyclability, but also the actual recycling, that will work much better, I would say, than the economical cost, because if consumer decide to select one packaging because of the recycling rate versus another, big shifts will happen. And we've started seeing this in plastic, as we heard, and I think it will continue. So it could be one way. It needs to be, implemented well. And I think there are other levers as well.
Okay, well noted. Harmonization and clarity sounds like paradise somehow. Very difficult to achieve. And if we go then to Portugal, to Filipe, you're working then on the other side in a way of the value chain, right? On the collection side. So do you see a role for eco-modulation? What would that take? And do you think maybe it could also cover better the real cost of the end of life management of materials?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. Some context for that, for person that don't know LIPOR. LIPOR is a municipal association that manages, recovers, and treats the municipality waste produced in 8 municipalities. Our biggest municipality is the municipality of Porto. Every year we treat around 500,000 tons of municipality waste, which is produced about 1 million people. So big numbers, 1 million people, 500,000 tons of urban municipality waste that every 4 days each citizen produce about 1.4 kilos of waste. That's our. And what we do, we collect, we receive the waste, we separate and prepare the recyclables to send to recycling industry. So when we recycle, for instance, the plastics, it's more easy to explain. We separate the PET, the PET, the film, and we give that material to the industrial recycling industry. So eco-modulations. LIPOR agree with the penalization of the use of materials that are less environmental and regarding to the users that are for those that are better. In Portugal, Packaging Recovery Organization Sociedade de Ponto Verde introduced penalty fees in 2019 for 3 types of packaging that disrupts the recycling process. PET bottles with metal cap, glass bottles with non-removable stopper, and PET bottles with PVC labels. And for us, this is the way to go, because in our side, what are our problems? We receive a lot of, for instance, like you are saying, clarity in the message, because we receive a lot of emails from people asking us, the citizens, where I can put this. This is recyclable, this is not. So the complexity of the bottles many times introduce confusion on people, and people don't know where they can put that package. It's a problem. The other problem is when we receive the waste, when they get to our facilities and we start to the sorting process. Well, if there are more complex, it's the sortage is manual. It takes more time. People new bottles have to see. Okay, this is it can be recyclable or not. And if, for instance, now we are changing to optical systems, what's going on? If the optical don't recognize the bottle, it rejects the bottle. So it's very important for us that there are a clear way path that must be followed, because for us we like monoculture, monos only one type of plastic. That is more easy to do, and basically we need to have a database that can have all this kind of package that are put in the market to help us to do the recycling with more efficiently. So what can I say? For us, more simple the best. One type of plastic is great. So the cost should be, to answer to our question, the cost should be adjusted to the real price of the cost of the whole process life cycle.
And that cost can evolve depending on the efficiency, effectiveness of the sorting and treatment processes afterwards. But monomaterial is clearly much easier to work with. So maybe here there's something to think about in terms of glass and how it links up with other materials as a final packaging solution. I would like to maybe move out of the themes of fees only, because obviously PROs have a much broader scope than just setting fees on materials. Jean, I mean, CTO has a long history. In addition to setting fees, can you also tell us a little bit about how PROs are active in the value chain, collaborating with brands, collaborating with glass manufacturers, recyclers, as to how you can improve the circular economy of glass packaging on a broader level than just fees?
Yes, what we do first of all with our clients, with the companies, we run a lot of R&D programs to improve recyclability. We talked about fee modulation, saying, okay, the more recyclable will your packaging be, the less you will pay. But at the same time, we have, and as Patrick said, we have to run collective programs to improve recyclability, especially on plastic issues like polystyrene, like HEPD, and so forth. And we have to create those outlets to make this happen really with the company. So eco-design overall is a big part of our activity. Then there is another big part of our activity, which is, and especially for the glass, as we said, is very recyclable, is to collect through the entire country the packaging and the glass. So in fact, what we do there, and we have deals in place with the 100% of the French municipalities, like Filipe in Portugal. And what we do is we pay the municipalities by the ton. So the more they collect glass or packaging, the more they get paid, and there is no limit to that. If they are very motivated, they can collect a lot of all the packaging. We will pay by the ton. And then what we also do is that we support investment projects to increase, for instance, the number of containers for glass. We have today about 100 projects in France concerning 8 million inhabitants to put up about 10% more of glass containers in France. We have about 200,000 glass containers. We want to have 225,000 in the next 2 years, so we help them do that. Then we have on-the-go programs like in cities, because we have really collection issues in cities like in Paris, in Marseille. And maybe to be quick in my answer, as you asked, I have to say that we also run and support some reuse projects. We're today talking about recycling, but reuse projects at local scale are interesting to support. We all know that reuse will be growing in the future as part of the reduction of the single-use plastic especially, and we all need to address this challenge and to know the conditions where reuse is better and the conditions where reuse is not better, because there is a lot of ideology on this issue, and we need to be very pragmatic and use our common sense to avoid sometimes stupid laws or things that might happen, especially in France, as Patrick said, because we love laws and text and debates, and then we sometimes say, "Oh, we did that. How did we that? How did we?"
Yeah, we brought Napoleon to the world. So
yes, exactly. We're like poets, and sometimes we need to be more pragmatics. Especially here.
But you raise some important areas where CTO is investing way beyond just simply setting fees, and I think this is really I think the core of the activity in the end of the PRO. Do you recognize that also in the Czech Republic, Petr? And maybe do you have an example of where the PRO goes beyond its specific mandate of setting fees?
Thanks. We in Czech, we are not the same like France, but the background it's almost the same. We have more than 6,000 municipalities, and each municipality set up their system of collection themselves. So we have to cooperate with them, and we use the same motivation like in France, that we have contract with these municipalities and we pay them per ton of collected glass. So that's the important part, to have the high quality and maximum quality of the collected glass. What we do, we have similar project, and like in France, that we buy like EKO-KOM the containers, and we borrow the containers for free to the municipalities in the areas where the density of the containers is lower than its average in the Czech Republic. And we rise up the quantity of containers by our containers and the containers which are bought by the municipalities 2-3% each year. So it's rise up. And for example, or it's interesting number that for average one container site, it's about 100-150 inhabitants. So it's very high density. So from our point of view, the important is the inhabitant which collect the glass with very good quality. We use the bottom emptying banks, so the quality of the glass, the glass is not so broken as from the top emptying containers. So it's one part, collect very high quality and quantity. But the problem, and as we see, is that we are not able to influence 100% to collect, to be participate actively on the separate collection. So we are thinking for the future to have the project in the areas where the municipalities will solve the problem with the household waste and their landfilling by the technology of sorting rest household waste and preparing refuse-derived fuel for the incineration plant or for heating plants. And where on these technologies, we call it MBT, or it's named like MBT. We want to find the solution how to take out from the rest waste the last part of glass which stay there. So it's solution for next years, and cooperate with this type of companies. And back to the glass, what's it important? Because on you collect the quantity, you have to sort it by the colors, take out the ceramics, stones, etc., etc. And after that, you have the fraction, which is a good fraction for glass factories and producing new glass. But you have the fine fraction and the fraction with some stones, etc. So we cooperate with the sorting plants and with the reprocessors to find a solution how to recycle this type of glass. So it's for example for glass fiber for isolation, or glass bricks like isolation bricks, or some construction application. So that's important.
So optimizing basically the recycling from other streams as opposed to just the bottle bank, and then R&D on the sorting and treatment process as well.
Great. And the last, it's to cooperate with HoReCa sector and collect all the glass from that, because it's very nice glass, very high quality, and the potential is still there.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so a lot of projects that go way beyond just setting fees. So that's a lot of work for you. If I go to Patrick, you mentioned then that you're producing food in different formats and you're using glass jars. Do you then have also specific partnerships on R&D on eco-design? I imagine maybe recycled content might be particularly challenging for you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we do work. For example, as Jean mentioned, we have our active R&D program where we looked at either creating recycling scheme, or indeed working on technology to increase the recycled content of some of our products, especially in glass, for example. But if I come back to your question, I think there's also a role that hasn't been described yet, which is about communication. You can have a nice recycling scheme, but if the consumer doesn't have the right behavior, so if it doesn't put it in the right bin, that's pretty useless. So for glass, it's actually pretty good if I take France or a number of countries, but still, you will have people who will wonder, brown glass, is it recycled or green or not? There is a bit of product left, can I recycle it, yes or no? And this may sound very trivial, but it can have huge implication when you look at the mass. And finally, I talked about harmonization, and we just talked about local municipalities. And I'm not in favor of a centralized model. But that said, a harmonized model would be very helpful. If I take an example, I live, as you said, in Lille, which is, I live actually in a village 15 kilometers from Lille. In my village, I need to bring glass to a collection point. If I move to 2 kilometers further, I'm part of the Lille area, and this is where I work actually. Glass is put in the green bin, and it's together with metal, with cardboard, with everything, and it's going to be recycled. So, if I would never move out of my village, that'd be fine. But, we all travel, especially once COVID is over. And, it's extremely confusing. Where do I put my bottle glass? So first, is it recycled or not? And then where do I put it? And once again, now, you cannot just leave it subject to local, circumstances. So you need to look, I would say, at the country level at least, to say, to have TV or mass media communication on the right behavior. And
I think you're breaking up a bit. But indeed, communication is another big part of the picture of the panel of options that PROs have. Sylvie, as a glass manufacturer, you have quality requirements, right, on the recovery of secondary raw materials, recycled glass. Do you feel that these quality requirements are sufficiently well understood by PROs and that they're acting accordingly?
This is, in fact, a targeted question, as indeed quality is the #1 challenge, in fact, that we need to address. Because, as you know, it's not linear, the level of efforts that we have to do to increase here the recycled content. The more we increase, and the same for the collection, I guess. It is a challenge to go to bridge this missing bottle that remains in the waste bin, because we are close to 8 bottles out of 10 being collected. But and we also need, as a parenthesis, also to acknowledge the good work done by the packaging recovery organizations in Europe, because in many states in the US, this is 2 to 3 bottles out of 10 that are collected. So having EPR is a clear success for the planet, for the environment. So we are very supportive. Now, the challenge for us is the quality. And it has been less of a topic until now because the focus was on the collection, because it was the way the recycling was measured. But in the future, the way to measure the recycling will be actually what is going out of the recycling plant, what is ready to be used by packaging producers. So it means that here we need to have a bigger focus on quality. And it is important for us because, for sure, as you can imagine, quality is also a big driver of for the cost of the packaging. And we need to make sure for the planet, for the prosperity, for the people, that ultimately to have a sustainable glass packaging material, also the cost of collection has to be also competitive. So we all have to collaborate on this. And it's not just the PRO, because the packaging recovery organizations alone cannot do it. Glassmakers alone cannot do it. We all need to work together. And I think we have a strong supply chain, but we need to reinforce the collaboration. It's only by having, in my opinion, targeted action plans on various drivers, because there is not a magic wand anywhere. There is not. There is a set of tools and there is teamwork, collaboration across the supply chain. And I have a good news for you, Patrick, because also in Lille, the collection, as Jean may confirm, will move to the bottle banks. But the budget has been voted. It shall be implemented by 2026. As I understood. And so this is, I think, a good news. And I can only also, and Jean, I would like to say, just to say, I also agree that we need to have more consistency in the guidance in terms of sorting basic messages. We need to make it fun and entertaining, not boring. And I think I remember very nice examples from Germany on having very fun and entertaining ways to incite consumers to in fact put glass only in the container, in the bottle banks. Jean, do you want to confirm?
I just confirm that Lille is going to change at last, which is very good news, because it doesn't make sense to send glass has its own stream.
No.
And it was the last place in France where it was not the case. I'm very happy about that.
And congrats to Lille for changing their minds. It takes a lot of wisdom in the end.
That's news indeed. Breaking live. But on this point then, on collection, because I think this is a key one, the relationship between packaging recovery organizations and municipalities, and the responsibility on setting up the collection systems, and the impact then of the collection system on the quality of the materials. Filipe, maybe then a comment on that, on how you see that relationship between your organization and, well, in your case, Sociedade Ponte Verde and some of the others in Portugal. How does the responsibility play out on setting up a collection system?
Sylvie and Patrick mentioned two topics very hot, very important for us: quality and communication. I start with the quality. We want to help Sylvia to get good material with good quality. So it's very important because, like Sylvia also said, the rates are changing, the way they are calculated. And if now for the rates we put the material that we collect, in the near future we'll put the quantity of material that we send to Sylvia. So this is a big change because the European goals are very high. So we have to improve in Portugal. We have some work to do. In that work we need more quantity, but quality, and that will bring us what Patrick was saying. one example, for instance, we have Porto. Porto receives some millions of tourists every year. They have lots of hotels, restaurants, but a lot of people came, spend 1, 2, 3 days in city and go away. We see that it's very difficult for that people to know where I put this. What is different that in Portugal, that in my country. So where I put my glass of bottle, where I put that's so, and that. When we have a system that 70% of the quantity of glass that we collect are in street bins, we need the public, we need the citizens to understand our rules, what we need, and to have a uniform language communication in all Europe. Because now we have the COVID, we are not traveling, but my God, in the last years, we go everywhere. Potentially this meeting will be where you are, for example, if not the COVID. So we changed a lot. We became a United States. So it's very important to have, because our goal in Portugal, the quantity has to increase. But to get that, we have to have quality. Because because look at us, when we receive, if it for us material that have more contamination, we have to do more work for us. More work. We have to put more people to work. The glass is not easy to short in our conditions, and it's very difficult to get the contaminants. So because the PRO in our country, they have quality requires very strict that we have to accomplish, and it's not easy because many times the focus who can help us is the citizens. So the communications. For all Europe and in each country, it's very important.
The consumer is at the start of that chain.
Yes.
Nevertheless, the collection infrastructure that is available to him will also influence a lot. And just maybe Sylvie, very quickly, do you have a preferred collection system or an ideal collection system that yields the kind of quality that you need?
Well, what we really prefer, strongly prefer, may I say, is a separate collection. We really need to collect glass separately from the other packaging materials, because otherwise it is damaging the recycling performance of glass, and it is also damaging the recycling performance of other packaging materials. So we need to have it separate, as a separate glass collection. Now, bottle banks has a proven track record in Europe among the countries which have the highest recycling rates. If you look at Belgium, if you look at Switzerland, if you look at Austria, bottle banks works very well, and it is cost effective. There can be some other ways, and we understand also in very highly populated cities, urban area, door to door may make sense as well, but really we should avoid at all costs the multi-material collection. And as always, there are also exceptions. Personally, I can understand how the nice city of Venice would not like to see bottle banks everywhere. So we have to accept that maybe there are some exceptions, but we also need to be consistent in terms of cost for the overall packaging chain. And I forgot to add on the other point, and it is in line with what we are saying here. We need to make sure, in fact, that here there is a good support on the sorting of the treatment of the glass material, because I think that if we do a choice in terms of collection, for instance, having mixed material collection, which is fine. We do not need to have color separated collection. It is good where we have it. In Germany, we have it. We have very nice cullet quality coming out of it. We are very happy with it, but we do not recommend having color sorted material in each and every country because it's not necessarily the most cost effective. But of course, we welcome and encourage more support from the packaging recovery organization in terms of subsidies for investments to further upgrade and enhance the recycling treatment of the material.
Okay, it's because I think on this collection point, what would be interesting also is to hear from Jean and Petr in maybe your key ingredient for success as to how it was that so many municipalities in France and in the Czech Republic chose to set up a bottle bank type system. What was that trigger? They're still responsible themselves for their own choices, as we see in Lille, for instance. So did you have an influence there, or was it simply just by chance? Maybe Petr first, and then we can go to Jean.
Okay, it's a collection of glass, I think, has a long history. And in our countries, after the revolution or before the revolution, we had the container banks for collection of glass too, because the make glass from the recycling material, it's cheaper and you spend less energy. But the key point is to have the same density of the containers like for other materials, that each collecting point of containers has the container for the glass. That's key. The second, we have really high density, and the participation of inhabitants is about 73-75%. So we have still some part of inhabitants which are not covered by the separate collection, but they are not sorting permanently. Maybe more of the glass they sort because it's easier, it's glass, and all the glass put in the collecting bank. So that in the beginning we start with the process that we motivate the municipalities by the fees per ton, and we had some special bonus. If you have some density of containers, you get the bonus. So the municipality was pushed to have the highest density as they have. But on the other hand, we have to think that the municipalities are not for the containers, they are for the inhabitants. So we are not able to have the containers each 10 meters. It's nonsense.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting because it's almost like the eco-modulation in reverse as to how you can incentivize densification through the guarantee of take-up and the price mechanism there. Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, and the last comment, important, it's communication with the inhabitants. We have the brochure in the cities, how to collect, what's happened with the glass, what are the products, and the same with the paper, plastic, etc., etc. So the communication and the people have to believe that what they do has the sense. So that's our way. Why we have just now the recycling or collecting rate about 88% for this year. But there are so
impressive figures.
The result of Czech.
And Jean, maybe a key ingredient of success. I mean, you already mentioned the densification strategy and investment, but how do you get to the bottle bank in each municipality?
Well, the first answer, as I said, Petr, is I have to say history. It's been a long time we've been collecting glass, so it's a usage. The second is, as you said, we were really pushing for densification of glass containers and also communication campaigns, which were linked to, fighting against cancer or helping some associations. And we really pushed those. So, each time you put your bottle of glass in the container, you help someone. So that's also was a strong incentive. And maybe the third one is that it's very heavy. And for municipalities, and Filipe might say, it's rather costly to keep glass in the waste stream. So, to send it to, incineration or so it's, there is a natural incentive also for glass to have a separate stream because it's very, very heavy. It costs a lot to send it elsewhere.
Yeah, each ton counts. We have another 5 or so minutes, so we have to start wrapping up. Sadly, there's so much to say. I would like to have a quick reaction just on this issue of communications, because everyone mentioned the issue of communications to consumers and citizens. Patrick, do you see a role for brands in addition to all the money you pump into, marketing and publicizing your products? Do you have a role to play on collection and recycling, and how could that work? Very quickly.
Sure. I first want to react to what Jean and Petr explained, because eco-modulation can work on the taxpayer. So in the village I live, sorry for the example, but we moved to collecting points some 5 years ago, and before that we had door-to-door, which, as you said, is a regression in terms of service to the citizen. But that was done by advertising and implementing a tax cut. So everyone knew from day one there was a tax cut, and you would see it on the tax slip. So the compliance from citizen is remarkable because of that. And to your question, it goes the same. Yes, of course, brands have a role to play, and they'll do it naturally when the awareness about the recyclability, the actual behavior will come. And once again, it comes with, I would say, long-term visibility on where the recycling streams are going.
Okay, and Filipe, then you're directly in facing the citizen, the consumer. How do you see all this coordination of communication and this need? I mean, so many different organizations are communicating. How do you see that split of responsibility and your role in that? Very quickly.
We have to meet all and talk together. It's very important. Because, sorry, I'll give you only some numbers. For instance, in Portugal, in last year in Porto we collect selectively 21,000 tons of glass. But when you look to the mixed waste, we see that we still have a potential of recovery about 18,000 tons. You have a big change. And when you look to the numbers, what you can see, like Patrick was a little saying, in the 70% collecting in the eco bins, and when we see to the per capita, we see per person, we see we are collecting 20 kilos per year per inhabitant. But for instance, in door-to-door collection, we have 26 kilos for year for inhabitant. So we are working in that because we have to do different projects to get closer to the people, to achieve a higher number. And all of that only makes sense with the communication and PR roles, systems, municipalities, government. It's very important to the governmental agents to participate, to pass a unique message, and to involve all the people. Because with these projects, I think that people, and in Portugal we see there are some percentage of the population is very hard to get to them. So we have to be innovators.
Okay, so a shared responsibility and more communication is required. Maybe Jean, a quick reaction.
Yes, there is some. We're talking about communication to the citizen, but there is and to link with what Patrick and Petr said earlier, there is another modulation or fee modulation, which is very interesting to stimulate collection of packaging, which is called pay as you throw. Pay as you throw is that the more you put waste in your usual residual waste, the more you pay, and the less you put in the bin, the less you pay. Therefore, every municipality who's put up this system has seen the residual waste bin going down, and the sorting bin, because this one is paid by the companies. No, it's not a tax. It's paying by Patrick and so forth. All these people are paying for that, and this goes up. So the wallet can be, something rather interesting to use to leverage collection of glass. And to put an end, because I think we've finished to the question: do we do EPR or do PROs all the key to close the loop? I would say that it's not a perfect system, but I've been working in this system for the past now 5 years, and I can say it's a real solution to circular economy. And you have to trust companies and responsibility of companies, because it's a combination between responsibility and freedom, and this works.
Okay, thank you very much, Jean. We go to Pet then. A final comment. Indeed, I would ask each of you to wrap up on maybe a small comment on communication, and then, according to you, do PROs then hold the key to close the loop, Petr? I think Petr has frozen. So I will. No, you're back. Okay, please go ahead.
So I have just comment to pay-as-you-throw systems. It's perfect for the tonnage of collected material separately. But in our experience, which we have, the quality of the materials, because the people are motivating to have the less as is possible of their residual waste, the quality of the separate collection can be worse as the voluntary sorting system. So that's the combination. And if you have a very good sorting plan, you will sort out the material. So we are, or our way, it's more to motivate the people, do it because you believe in the system, not motivate them by the money, because by the money, really the quality go down. So it's our experience, but it's maybe our specifics, but I share it.
So do you hold the loop? Yes, no, or maybe? Okay, then let's go to Patrick then. So do you think that packaging recovery organizations hold the key to close the loop?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
If they don't just collect taxes, they have much broader roles, and we talked about it, than just if they only collect taxes, they'll be just seen as an economic levy from the state.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. We go to Filipe then. Do you think they hold the key to close?
Yes,
the loop?
no doubt about that. We must work together, and without that, we not will achieve the goals. No doubt.
Okay, thank you very much, Filipe. And then Sylvie, on your end of the chain, do you think they hold the key to close the loop?
Yes, and I would like to take a football image. As we see the packaging recovery organizations as the referee in the field, organizing the games, and then it's the players who have to score the goals.
Okay, so the striker here would be who? Bonduelle or OI?
Yeah, we're in the same team. We need to score the goal.
Fantastic. Well, honestly, thank you so much to the five of you for having taken the time to discuss this complex issue. I see in the audience we have a strong agreement that PROs are really holding the key. So good luck in your continued work. And we see each other another time. Thank you for having taken part.
Bye-bye.
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 And we now move to our best practice presentation of the day. And for our best practice, I am pleased to move to Leeds. Travel to Leeds today, and we meet our guide, Rob Greenland, who is co-director at Social Business Brokers CIC. Rob, tell us about your glass recycling story in Leeds.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and thank you and welcome, and thank you for having me this afternoon. We haven't got much time, so I just want to tell you a bit about what we do in Leeds at Zero Waste Leeds. Our broader work around recycling, and then particularly looking at our work on glass that we're about to start working with the glass industry in Leeds. So in basically what we're doing at Zero Waste Leeds is looking to build a movement to help Leeds to become a zero waste city by 2030. So we're a social enterprise and not-for-profit business, and what we're interested in is working with a broad range of people to help people to waste less in their daily lives. And very quickly, just to give you a bit of context about the kind of work that we do, we've been involved in a project called LeedsbyExample, which we worked with people from across the waste industry. And that was particularly about on-the-go recycling, so making it as easy as possible for people to recycle plastic bottles, drinks cans, that kind of thing, whilst they're out and about. And you'll see immediately it was a very kind of visual campaign, you know, when we tried to engage people. I think that's been a real kind of theme of the discussion this afternoon in terms of finding ways to engage people. And you can see the kind of nice, colourful kind of bins to try to get the kind of different waste streams on the streets of Leeds. And then we also try to have kind of social impacts in our work as well. So we've done a lot of work on clothing and textiles. We've done a piece of work at making it easier for people to reuse and pass on school uniform. And we've also done quite a bit of work on clothing and fashion, because Leeds is a city which has been at the heart of the kind of clothing and textile kind of industry. And we wanted to kind of look back at that history to then think about what might come in the future. And again, I think that's a key theme here about kind of place-based campaigns. And I won't go into too much detail on this because we're short on time, but I think some of the issues that I've talked about here kind of have come up in the discussion already. And I think I'd probably kind of say in particular about the kind of positive messages and about the importance of finding ways to engage citizens in what we're doing, because I think they are obviously a key part of whatever we're trying to do in terms of increasing recycling. So how does that bring us to glass? Well, basically last year we did a piece of work with the council in the early weeks of the COVID-19 epidemic about helping people to reduce waste at home. And obviously one of the kind of key waste streams that we all kind of used a lot more was glass. We were consuming a lot more at home. And we did a story on local news working with different people from the glass industry and the council to basically acknowledge and celebrate that during last year, there was a big increase in glass recycling in the city. And I mean, just to give you kind of context in terms of how we recycle glass in Leeds, again, it's been quite interesting to hear the different kind of practices elsewhere. Leeds is a city of about 750,000 people, and we recycle our glass at around 400 glass banks across the city. So although we've got other kind of household collections for glass, we take it to glass banks. And typically we recycle about 10,000 tonnes, but the estimate from the council is around 15,000 tonnes actually gets thrown away in people's household bins. So there's a lot that we could still recycle. But as I say, the big kind of positive from last year was a 37% increase in the amount of glass that people recycled at their glass banks. And that's exactly why we wanted to see how can we build on that success last year to make sure that that continues. So basically, we were working with various stakeholders in the glass industry, so British Glass, Adar Glass and Allied Glass, and also URM, who collect the glass in Leeds. And we're creating a 3-month social media campaign. And I think, again, you know, communications has been a key thing that we've discussed in our, in the discussions this afternoon. But we want to make it a positive campaign to celebrate what we've done last year, and then encourage people to continue to recycle their glass. We also want to make it easier for people, because again, it's been interesting to hear the kind of different perspectives on glass banks. Often it's not seen as a positive here, you know, and people sometimes say, I don't know where my glass bank is. You know, we want to make that easier with a new map, and also just, you know, communicate better with people so that they know where their glass banks are. And then we want to tell the really good glass recycling and circular economy story that all of us here kind of know, but maybe citizens don't know as well. And we want to try to find engaging ways to tell that story. And again, learning from our textile work, tell that as a local story. Yorkshire is a part of the world where there's lots of glass has been made. Traditionally, we want to tell a story of glass made in Yorkshire, consumed here, recycled here, and then back to kind of new products. And then the other aspect of the campaign is to try to increase the visual appeal of some of the glass banks. Some of them look very good at the moment. Others, maybe like the two in the photo here, not so good. And we want to see if we can work with some local community groups and young people and local artists to basically improve the banks, make them look more beautiful, and hopefully as an asset to their community, more people may notice them and more people may recycle at the glass bank. So I suppose, just keen to leave you with 3 questions. And again, I think it's been really interesting to see about a lot of these themes have already come up in the discussion, really. I think there's something about how can we kind of collaborate across the sectors to basically engage people more so they keep recycling their glass. And again, I think sometimes we can forget citizens. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's really important to think, how do we engage with local citizens? And obviously us as a local kind of social enterprise that's got strong community roots, we recognise we've got a lot to offer there. I think telling better stories, I think, is good as well. There's a really good glass story to tell, but sometimes we need to kind of improve how we tell those stories about recycling our glass. And then I think, again, this theme has come up already about, we all live in a place, in a place which actually, sometimes will have different approaches to glass recycling, but also different histories and relationships and things like that. And we're really keen to encourage people to think, how do you build upon some of that to develop really good, effective campaigns, which ultimately get more people recycling their glass, have more recycled glass for the industry, and then have a big kind of environmental impact overall. So I'm conscious that's a very quick kind of overview of our work, but obviously just search for Zero Waste Leeds online and you'll find out a lot more about what we're doing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob, for sharing that. And I think it will be a food for thought for the future as to how your kind of organisation can also get involved in the value chain as a mobilising force for citizens. So
I would think so.
We'll be following that example closely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob, for having been with us. And we now move to our news update of the Close the Glass Loop platform. So, as every time, we have our news update to keep informed of the activities of Close the Glass Loop, and I'm joined by Vanessa Chesnot, Senior Product Policy Manager at FEVE, who will take us through the latest.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'll try to be short. And for this second news update, I wanted to tell you about what we are doing with Close the Glass Loop in relation to the HoReCa channel. So that is hotels, cafes, and restaurants. So basically the hospitality sector. So you may know, I hope you know, that Close the Glass Loop has 2 objectives. One is to reach an EU average of 90% collection for recycling rate by 2030, so up from the current 76%. And the second objective is to increase the quality of collected glass. And in that respect, the HoReCa channel is really key. So glass packaging being consumer packaging, the whole circular economy of glass relies heavily on the point of collection of empty bottles and jars. And product packed in glass are usually consumed and discarded either in households or in hotels, cafes, and restaurants. So the HoReCa channel is really an important market for glass-packed products. And in relation to the objectives of Close the Glass Loop, it's a significant potential in terms of glass waste collection and recycling. And that's why this channel has been identified as a priority in the Close the Glass Loop platform. So, of course, that being said, we are very mindful of the fact that HoReCa businesses are going through very hard times at the moment. And our objective is really to help them with tailored solutions that can support the sector's sustainable recovery. So what we are trying to do right now in the platform is really to better understand the sector from a different perspective. So we are, for instance, doing a mapping that we recently presented and discussed during an expert workshop. And there are already very interesting findings, which really allowed us to start deep diving into key consideration. So, for example, we see that the significance of the HoReCa channel is very different from one product category to another. So it's the on-trade sales represent more than 30% of sales in volume for a number of products such as beers, wines, or spirits, and much less in other product categories. What is also a very important consideration is the share of refillable glass versus the share of one-way glass, because that has an important impact in terms of how we want to improve reverse logistics in the sector. Also, the volume of glass waste that is generated and collected in each country is very different from one country to another. It can be more than 50% in Spain or in Portugal, while it's much less, below 10% in other countries. Also, what we see is that the recycling performance is usually perceived to be below the overall average collection for recycling rate, and there can be a number of reasons that explain this perception. For example, lack of space to store empty containers, or the lack of tailor-made solutions. And so these are the challenges that we are trying to understand better within the platform. And what we are also trying to do is to pull together case studies and best practices from different countries. And from what we've seen so far, all of them demonstrate, for instance, the importance of trainings, awareness-raising campaigns, having tailored collection modes for HoReCa operators, such as adapted bottle banks, and cooperation with local authorities is very key. And finally, and very importantly, we want to engage directly with the HoReCa channel to really understand their challenges and needs, and work together on concrete solutions that can work on the ground. So the first discussions we have in Close the Glass Loop are very interesting and promising, and therefore we felt that it would the sector would deserve a full episode of 90 minutes to close the loop, close to the summer break, and hopefully we will have some good news with the easing of the closures and restrictive measures on the sector. So we really invite you to join us on the 30th of June for this episode, and that will also be an opportunity to celebrate the first year of Close the Glass Loop online, but all together. So we really look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much, and stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. As Petr also said in the discussion, HoReCa is a key priority. So that will be the topic. We hope to meet you online on the 30th of June. We'll send you the registration form in the email following this event, as well as a feedback form that you're invited to fill in, so we continue to improve on our production of this series. And all the materials will be available on the Close the Glass Loop website. So thank you very much for joining, and see you at the next episode. Bye-bye.